Today, we're going to talk about King's movers. That's right, those dirty, low-down, cheatin', snorkel-having King's movers. But is the King's move really cheating, or does it have its pros and cons just like any other move? Spoiler alert, it's cheating. The King's move is likely the very best move in arm wrestling. But don't worry, in this video, we're going to show you the fatal weaknesses of the King's move. The King's move has a huge flaw that is easily exploitable. You might be shocked by how simple it is to defeat the King's move. But firstly, we need to define exactly what the King's move is. If you ask Devin Larratt what the King's move is, and then you ask the average arm wrestling fan what it is, you will get vastly different answers. For example, Devin might say that an open top roll and a King's move are basically the same thing. But for this video, we will define the King's move as a top roll in which you are either at or right next to a bone lock position. So here, Devin is in a King's move, and here he isn't. Make sense? Now, what is the purpose of the King's move? Especially for people who are newer to the sport, seeing a King's mover can be pretty confusing. At first, it looks like the only thing that's happening here is Michael's arm is getting ripped open all the way until it hits a bone lock, and then he just sits on that bone lock without burning any energy until his opponent gasses out, just like a seesaw. But this is not the case. It may look like Michael is just putting pressure straight up into the air like a bicep curl, but Michael is actually putting a twisting, torquing pressure onto his opponent's hand. The most important part of the King's move is actually pronation. The goal of the King's move is to crack your opponent's wrist back. It's not just your last resort while trying not to get pinned. It's premeditated and diabolical. You are giving away all your shoulder commitment on purpose in order to increase your pronation. The reason this works is because of the biomechanics of the move. We can see how this works by looking at Devin versus Dave in round 1 of WAL. Notice how off the go of the match, Devin's pronator muscle actually fails. We know this because the palm of Devin's hand is facing upward. However, he still manages to crack Dave's wrist back right after this. But he doesn't do this with the strength of his pronator muscle. He does this by rotating his entire body and hoping that his forearm bone doesn't snap in half under the twisting pressure. This is what creates the extra force needed in order for Devin to defeat Dave's wrist and get his palm back to facing sideways. So what could Dave have done differently from this position? Well, the short answer is nothing. Once Dave was in this position, the match was already over. And the reality is that the King's move is a really, really good move. Not only is it the very most effective way to attack someone's wrist, but it is also especially good for endurance-based arm wrestlers. This is because you are incorporating your structure into the match. When Devin rotates his entire body, he is using some muscles, but he is also just hoping that his bones don't break while he does that move. This sounds bad at first, but it's actually a good thing. This is because bones don't get tired, so Devin can just hang out there for as long as he wants to, and it will just get worse and worse for Dave. So what now? If the King's move is that good, it should be banned, right? Well, the King's move has a deep, dark secret. There's a simple trick you can use that will completely nullify the King's move instantly, and it's super simple. All that you have to do is stop trying to pin. That's it. Just don't try to pin. And how do I know this, you ask? All we have to do is take a look at a King's mover arm wrestling another King's mover. When Devin Larratt went up against Michael Todd, if the King's move was really the best move that existed and there was no way to counter it, you would expect to see a double King's move match that just never ended. But that's not what we saw. As soon as the match starts, we see Devin maintaining the center table and controlling height. But notice how Devin just sits there. He doesn't try to pin Michael until he first climbs up and over the top of Michael quite a bit. And this is because King's movers are only strong when their arm is stretched out. But the trick is that they can't control whether or not that happens. You control that. So all you have to do to beat the King's move is simply not stretch your opponent's arm out by trying to pin. If you try to pin a King's mover off the go of a match, that's exactly what they want, and you've fallen right into their trap. But if you stay in the center table for the majority of the match, you're turning the King's mover back into a normal guy. This is what we saw Devin do against both Michael Todd and Denis Saplinkov. He spent the vast majority of the match closer to the center of the table. He only went close to the pin pad for a tiny percentage of the match once he already had climbed and gained an advantage first. So you see, Devin didn't defeat the King's move by simply defeating the King's move. He defeated the King's move by not allowing his opponent to even use the King's move in the first place. And this tells us everything we need to know. Devin Larratt is the very best King's mover out there, so he knows all the flaws and weaknesses of a King's mover, and he put them on full display for all of us to see and implement. Now, if all this is not quite making sense, let me say it once more in the most concise way possible. The arm wrestler who controls whether or not the match goes to a King's move is not the King's mover. It's the King's mover's opponent. And that is the secret to defeating it. Happy arm wrestling, everybody.